Welcome to the Recovery Daily podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Miller. I'm a stroke survivor and grateful recovering alcoholic. Today's topic is emotional self-reliance. I was thinking about this because when I first started dating my boyfriend, who now we've been together for 16 years, I think. If I'm calculating correctly, yes, 17, maybe 17 years. I was consciously making this decision that I was not going to have my happiness depend on him, because I knew all too well, after just having been going through a divorce, that relationships are temporary. That is what I thought to myself. They always had been in my life, and the one that I thought would not be temporary was ending. Excuse me. So I felt like it was important at that point for me to make sure that I have happiness in my life with or without my boyfriend. And I felt like this was not a bad thing. I didn't feel like this was, closing myself off to having a meaningful relationship. It's just that throughout my life, I feel like I was always just obsessed with my partner, whoever it was. I just couldn't. Once I started a relationship with somebody, it's like who I was kind of faded into the background. Who I was as a person um faded away and was behind this who we are concept, me and the other person, and we became one, if that makes sense. So I feel like a lot of people do that. And so I wanted to talk about that. Uh, it's interesting that that came to me at that time in my life. I was still drinking, and I when I got divorced, I spent a lot of time alone. Um, Even when I started dating my boyfriend, because we lived about an hour apart. So during the week, we were apart, so I spent lots of time alone. I had kids at the time. I still have my kids, but they were young. And so I was very much using all of my fuel, to nurture my children, and making sure that I had some left over for me. And there, that was a big transition time for me, as you can imagine. So it was important for me to take responsibility for my own happiness at that point. I didn't want my well-being to rely on someone else. I didn't know how to do this, though, while still being open to love and be vulnerable. I knew what I wanted. I just wasn't quite sure how to do it. I wanted it to be a situation where nobody had to be present for me to hold on to happiness. And during that time, I had alcohol. So as I talk about it right now, I'm thinking alcohol really filled a huge gap for me. I think that when I was alone, it was me and my alcohol. And I'm talking about, of course, like when my kids were off doing their own things. I was alone. And I drank. I was constantly drinking. And so this idea of, after I was divorced and I was living with my two kids, it wasn't that when other people came over, my boyfriend, when my kids hung out with me, my mom, it doesn't mean that I didn't just freaking light up when they were around me. I mean, of course, that is another level of joy that we get from others. What I'm talking about is that static, underlying existence that we feel on a day to day basis. And I found over the years that seeking happiness outside of me was teeing me up for disappointment. I heard today in some of the research that I was doing that expectations are premeditated resentments. And I kind of like that because when I have expectations, when my happiness depends on what I'm getting from other people, not only are they inevitably not going to meet my expectations, but I'm also dismissing my own likable qualities and ignoring my strengths. When I was younger, being alone had a negative connotation to me. My mom used to say, you need to be your own best friend. You need to be happy when you're alone. Because I was always running around the house. I'm bored. I wasn't running around the house. I was moping around the house. I'm bored. And my poor mom, I've said this before, I don't know what to do for you, Rachel. She's got a lot going on. She had 3 kids and she was raising us on her own. So to have one of them, the youngest, walking around just going, I'm bored. I'm sure that she's just like, oh, just get out of from under my feet. So today, though, I love being alone. And it's something that I've practiced in sobriety. Learning how to be alone and not drink was the first thing that I had to tackle. I talked about that trip that I had to San Francisco where it was the first trip that I made where I was alone. Nobody would have known whether I drank or not. And it took me some time and a couple laps around the block, but I came to the conclusion that I would know, you know? Nobody else would know I was drinking, but I would know. And I got to figure out how to be happy with myself and not lie to myself. Um, so I was really getting to know the real me. And I found that I could make myself laugh. I could make myself be cozy. I could do things that I enjoyed just with myself. And there's this episode. It makes me think of this episode on Big Bang Theory. I watch Big Bang Theory. Well, I was watching Big Bang Theory every night. My boyfriend and I would watch Big Bang Theory marathon every night, and on TBS. And so I know it by heart. I would love to just listen to it. I probably know it well enough that I can just listen to the episodes now and just picture how the scenes go in my head. But anyway, there's this one episode where Leonard goes on a blind date with a friend of Bernadette. And at one point, the lady says to Leonard, "There's something you need to know about me. I'm hilarious." And for some reason, it just makes me laugh all the time because I feel that way. I say it all the time to people because it's just, it's a funny way to look